I am sure this video is going to get some negative comments, and that's okay. I'm going to explain why in just a second. But so I saw this post on the Zig subreddit, which this is why I'm probably going to get those negative comments. And I felt like it warranted talking about. So if you haven't seen this yet, that's okay. My advice would be to stay off of the Zig subreddit. It's gotten better, but it was a very, very negative place for a long time. In fact, if I go to Zig and then I search for Zig communities, I'm pretty sure that Andrew himself mentioned to stay away from the Zig subreddit. Let me see if I can find that somewhere. I thought that was quite funny. If you are looking for something as an alternative, Zigit is great. You should sign up there. I'll pull that up too. Reddit. Yeah. The section's written by Andrew Kelly. I used to moderate the r/Zig subreddit. During the Reddit protests of June 2023, I decided to permanently shut down r/Zig, make it private, encouraging users to head to zigit.dev instead. That explains why Zigit is so good. A troll messaged Reddit admins and gained moderator access to r/Zig, reopened the subreddit, and started doing juvenile vandalism for a few weeks before deciding they had enough fun and abandoning the place. Jens Goldberg messaged the Reddit admins and managed to become a moderator of Zig. He's pretty hands-off, does not do a lot of moderation, lets the Reddit voting system handle disagreements. While the subreddit was private, the vast majority of valuable people moved to other communities. Most of people who remained were riffraff, willing to tolerate trolling, and more interested in Reddit as a platform than Zig as a project. Now the subreddit is a complete wasteland. A little harsh, but fair. Personally advise against going there. In fact, I've deleted my entire Reddit account. I don't have the time or energy to evaluate most Zig communities, so I can neither endorse nor anti-endorse them. However, the Zig subreddit is an exception. It's an awful place, and I stand by my decision to permanently close it. I am unhappy that it was reopened against my will. Wild. Anyways, so that's why I think I'm probably going to get some negative comments. But the actual meat and potatoes of this issue, this Reddit post, is actually quite interesting. So a couple days ago, ALF Minecraft posted 4 out of 5 most upvoted issues on the tracker have now been closed as won't fix. What does that mean? So the tracker, in case you don't know, is how we track issues. It's the issue tracker for Zig. It's on GitHub. It's public. You can file issues. You can upvote on issues. You can comment issues. And generally, upvoting issues is a way to say, hey, or a thumbs up on the issue is an upvote. But that's generally a way to say, hey, I think this is a great idea. We should fix it. We should do this thing. So not everyone gives a thumbs up. Some people support in other methods, but the thumbs up is generally an okay way to measure how interested people are in improving those things. So there are 5 issues here. If you sort by reactions, +1 descending, so that +1 is the thumbs up, you can see that these are it. So let's take a look at them. So the first one's make the main Zig executable no longer depend on LLVM, LLD, and Clang libraries. Okay, that sounds fantastic. This one's still open. It actually has the most thumbs up by far and a ton of comments. It's been accepted as a proposal and it's good to go. It looks like it's slated for 015. So we might see this in 2025 towards the end of the year. The next one is allow returning a value with an error. This is very Go-esque, and maybe we should actually look at let's do that. We're going to pull up GitHub and we're going to go to, where do we go? Zig. Pull up Ziglang, and let's actually look at those issues to a T. I don't want to get anything wrong. So this is 2647. So if we go to closed, and then I think actually we can just click on this and do 2647. Allow returning a value with an error. Close is not planned. Sometimes when a function fails, there's extra information that you have on hand that may help the caller respond to the problem or produce a diagnostic. For example, in the parse U64 example by Andrew here, you can see we have a const parse error, and then we have error invalid character or overflow. Those are our error types. And we have pub function parse U64. It takes in a buff, takes in a radix, and then returns a parse error or a U64. It would be useful for the function could return the position of the invalid character so that the caller could produce a diagnostic message. Because Zig treats error types specially, when you use errors, you get a bunch of nice features such as the bang, error set inference, try catch, and error defer. You currently lose these features if you want to return extra diagnostic information, since that information is no longer an error type. It totally makes sense. I'm really glad I pulled this up because this title was a little misleading. This made me think of the way that Go does error handling, where you can return multiple values. But it sounds more like the issue is that errors are a very, very specific type in Zig, and you can't associate metadata with those errors. So, for example, what they might be looking at is something like invalid character and then a string with a message that provides more information, or an index with a position, or something like that. Something like the index of bad character is less useful for parsing an integer. Getting bad character with no location when parsing 2 kilobytes of JSON blob is very frustrating. I agree. This is the current state of the standard library's JSON parser. I also agree with that. I ran into a really fun error that basically said JSON is not valid, and there was no indication as to what was invalid with the JSON. Yeah, not a fun time. There are currently workarounds possible today to let this extra information get out, neither of which are very ergonomic and which work against Zig's error types. So you can see here, you could return a tagged union. We talked about those in my last video on Code Crafters and the Zig Redis challenge. This is unfortunate in a number of ways. First, because invalid character is no longer an error, you cannot propagate/handle the failure with try catch. Second, because the invalid character case is no longer an error, you cannot use error defer to clean up partially constructed state in the parser. Finally, calling the function is made messy because it can fail in 2 separate ways. You either have an error union or an explicitly returned union. Yeah, I don't think this is the solution, but I get what they're trying to accomplish here, and I think that's a valuable thing to try to accomplish. I don't know how you do it, and maybe this is why this ended up being closed. So you could write it to an out parameter. I really don't like that. This makes the function's interface much messier. It now includes mutation. Yep. And it makes it impossible to indicate that it's being called in such a way that it cannot fail. Yep, that's fair too. So the proposal is associate each error with a type. Scroll down to a comment for a refresh proposal. Sure, let's do that. Let's go straight to the comment. Restate the proposal a little more fully now that some discussion has improved it. Concept of error sets. Yep. Error sets can be combined with any type into error union types, like so. Yep. Instances of an error set are error values. Yep, that makes sense. Propose generalizing error sets into new features, which I will call tagged error sets. They might look like this. This makes sense. I see the value in this. I see why someone might want to do this. Note that the existing syntax error ABC still works, which means the same thing as before. A or B works as before, but requires that errors in common to both are associated with the same type. I propose that an instance of tagged error set can be written like this. Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I see how that could be useful. An error union works as before. The hash or the shebang combines, that's not a shebang, is it? It's just an exclamation mark. Combines a tagged error set and type. Catch and try work as before. Okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Always feels good when someone self-proclaims that their issue fits, or their solution fits into the zen of the language, but I don't necessarily disagree. I'm actually going to scroll down to the bottom. I'm curious why this was closed. Considering how often we work with errors and how useful it is to have detailed information on the errors, I don't think the fact that we can work around it is a valid reason to not make a better experience. When was this closed? Closed is not planned December 7th. Error codes are for control flow. Okay. I don't know what to say. I have a lot of respect for Andrew. I wish he would elaborate a little bit more. I don't disagree with him that error codes are control flow. Okay, I agree that he also agrees that error codes are good for control flow, but it is super common to not care about what the actual error was until much higher in the stack, and there's no idiomatic way to attach that state. That is true. There's no idiomatic way to do that, which is problematic. I agree. I've discovered this pattern when I want to have error control flow. Some examples here. Okay, so I could spend all day talking about this specific issue that was closed. this title is maybe not the best title, but I agree with this. I actually think this is something that is valuable information, and it would be nice to see, especially if you are having errors somewhat nested deep and you want to surface that root cause error up for whatever reason. Maybe you have an API in like debug mode and you want to have an error that happens really far down, make it all the way up without losing its type or without losing its information that's associated with it. And then surface that as like, part of the HTTP response, maybe via a header or something. So the people who are working on the API locally can debug with the errors that they saw exactly happen. Okay, what else? Sorry, we shouldn't have closed that. What else we got? 1717. Oh, this one's old. Make function definitions expressions. This is a proposal based on 1048, even older. Thank you for everyone discussing on that thread, lambdas, closures, and everything in between. I'm pretty sure Andrew does not like lambdas. I open this because I believe the conversation contains important details but addresses too many features at once. It provides syntactic consistency among all statements which bind something to an identifier. Sounds like a good idea. Syntactic foundation for new features such as functions and functions, passing anonymous functions as arguments. Yeah, proposal. Make the following true. A function definition is an expression. Okay. All functions are anonymous. Okay. Binding a function to a name is accomplished with assignment syntax. Sure, makes sense to me. Is this valuable? Is this something Zig really needs? I've not needed to do anything with an anonymous function yet. That being said, you can do some pretty wonky stuff with pointers to functions that might solve some of the same issues. I don't know when you would really want an anonymous function when you could do that outside of leaning on an anonymous function as a part of your toolbox just because you're comfortable with it. I guess what I'm getting at is, while this might feel nicer, I feel like there are ways to kind of tackle the same thing similarly. I do think you maybe run into some interesting issues with scope. So if you try to use something outside the scope, in that scope, the anonymous function makes more sense. I don't know if I would suggest doing that. I think maybe passing all your arguments to a function might be a better approach. Some benefits, some examples. So the main function would now follow this rule. This looks so familiar. Why does this look so familiar? Not sure. Kind of makes me think of maybe Dart, or maybe it's not Rust. I'm not sure what other language this makes me think of, but yeah, it makes me think of something similar. The extern qualifier still goes before the function because it qualifies the function definition, but pub still goes before the identifier because it qualifies the visibility. Okay, sure. Semantics, if we agree that this is a good idea. Advanced mode, deferring a function, sure. That's interesting. Deferring, having a function that is deferred and then executing the defer of that function feels a little bit more complicated than just deferring a block, but I guess I can get it. Keep it down. I'm disguised as Go. I wonder if anonymous functions would provide benefits to asynchronous programming. Fair. Yeah, it probably would. Okay, so status quo is perfectly usable and looks familiar to those with C. Yeah, I agree. I do think it's usable as is. I wouldn't say perfect, but pretty. I could live without this, and it sounds like I might have to since their work is not planned. Okay, let's see. Curious when this was closed. August. No. It's a part of this milestone which was closed. So when was this closed? Do we know? Zigling deleted a comment from 2 weeks ago. That's not cool. I wonder what the comment was. No, because the proposal was rejected. Okay, so it does not hold. Was looking for some more information. Crazy idea, RFC, function signature bindings. Oh, this is now accepted. Interesting idea, but I'm going to stick to the original proposal. The path forward is update the parsers to accept both, update Zig format. Okay, so on 2019, it was accepted, but it sounds like it has since not been accepted, has been unaccepted. modified the milestones. This was a long time ago. One thing I want to address on this proposal before implementing is it is export. There's a problem here, which is in status quo is different than. Ooh, yeah, this is interesting. I guess I get that this is referring to specifically interfacing with C code. I like this less than I like this, for what it's worth. Okay, what else we got? Missing export name. I was hoping to see when they closed it. Tons of information here. Not finding it. I don't want to spend the whole time digging through this, but I do want to call out an important thing. So as I'm scrolling through this, I'm looking for either the closed symbol or Andrew's face over here. And the reason that I'm looking for Andrew's face is that with the Zig and the Zig Foundation, Andrew is essentially the spearhead for Zig and the foundation. So it's hard to say because in a way it's his language. So he makes a lot of the decisions around what is and what isn't included as part of the language. And I think that's just something you have to understand and accept if you want to use Zig. This doesn't mean that the decisions are always the right decisions, or maybe that's also true, but it doesn't mean that also they're decisions that are going to make you happy. So Zig has a mission and a vision. Let's not Zig it. Let's see if I can pull that up, if I can find it really quickly. Yeah, right here. No hidden control flow, no hidden memory allocations, no preprocessor, no macros. So that's it. Like that is essentially the guardrails that exist for Zig today. There might be more information on the Zig Foundation. I'm not sure if they have any more information on it. It doesn't look like it. But this is the guardrails that Andrew's trying to operate in, to my knowledge. I don't know him personally. So this is, if it's compromising on these things, it probably won't happen. Anything else, it's kind of up for debate. And some of this, could be argued as a way to convolute the control flow, whether intentional or not, whether it's not necessarily hidden, but might convolute the control flow. Like that's probably something that they don't want to support as well. Okay, what other ones we got? RFC, we just went over this one. 1268. 1268. Comptime interfaces. Okay, yeah. Zig currently has very bad code for expressing sort of shared properties. Yeah. I don't disagree with this, but I also come from a pretty OOP heavy background. A lot of the code that I've been writing outside of, actually, for the past 15 years, I've written Objective-C, started with Objective-C, moved on to Java, moved on to PHP, another Java shop that used Java and Groovy, Scala. After Scala, it was Python. After Python, TypeScript really heavily. Tons of TypeScript. Kotlin, Elixir, which might be the notable exception on this list. Some Ruby, more TypeScript, Dart, and more TypeScript, and Go and Python. So, and some Clojure along the way, but that one's a tricky one to count. The point I'm getting at is that most of those languages that I've mentioned have some form of interfaces, and I am so comfortable with interfaces or traits. I'm so comfortable with both of those. So what I see that solves the same problem in Zig is really, I don't want to say rough, but it's very different than anything I'm used to. In fact, Carl Seguin, who seems to make an appearance in every single one of my videos on Zig now, has this really great information on how interfaces work in Zig. And it looks at like writer, for example. The way that it works is essentially you're wrapping the type in a different type. and that different type is encapsulating that type, and you lose access to some of the type safety, lose access to it. You'll end up using things like align cast and pointer cast to get back to the type that you were working with. But you can see here that there's actually, let's just go to the bottom. He's got a full example down here at the bottom. I lied. He does not have a full example at the bottom. It's right here. Right here. I knew I'd find it eventually. So yeah, this anonymous struct, this writer is essentially, it's not anonymous. This writer struct is the interface. So it has a single write all method, and it takes a pointer to any opaque, and then it takes a pointer to a constant function that takes in a pointer of any opaque and data that it needs to write, and then returns any error or void. Down here, you can see how that's actually used. So you have this write all method right here, and the write all and self are used in this writer function that returns a writer. So you're essentially wrapping the file after erasing the type. So you're erasing the pointer to file and converting it to a pointer to any opaque, and then you are wrapping it in a writer and then returning that writer. But if we look at this function that gets passed here, this write all, the very first thing this write all does is it takes in a pointer to any opaque and then gets a file out of that any opaque type by using align cast and pointer cast. And then it does, the write that you're expecting. So that's kind of the way that interfaces sort of work in Zig. My assumption here is that there's like runtime overhead for this too. I have not proved or disproved that. I probably should throw this in Godbolt and see what the overhead looks like. But my hunch is that, yeah, there's got to be some overhead here, right? So yeah, shared properties, interfaces, traits, little different than what I'm used to in other languages. Look at mem allocator and heap XYZ for the implementations if you're not already. There are other places where there are smells, of course. Okay. Field parent pointer and function pointers just make the code hard to read and unnecessarily inefficient by adding pointer directions. Field parent pointer is a weird one. I don't like it at all. I ended up using that in the Zap video that I did with the HTTP server. Boy, was that not a fun experience. Every time I wrote this, it felt bad. Zig has compile time duck typing. Okay, sure. Syntax for interfaces could be something like this. So you have an interface, and then it takes in some interface. So yeah, it would be duck typing, I guess, too, in this case. So if it looks like this interface, then it is this interface, which is great. That's one of the things I really like about Go. Really, really nice approach if we were to take this. I'm going to, again, scroll down and try to find either Andrew's face or when it was closed. Closed is not planned. I'm not saying there won't be interfaces of any kind ever, but there are no current plans for adding them, and this proposal is incomplete. It does not propose anything specific. I suggest if you want to use Zig, you accept the fact that it may never gain an interface-like feature, and also trust the core team to add it in a satisfactory manner if it does get added at all. Okay, yeah. You heard it here. Let's look at the last one. 9260. 9260. One thing I want to point out, this was by Ghost, and this is by Ghost. I'm 99% sure this is... Oh, never mind. Take the place of user accounts that have been deleted. Okay, I am not sure about anything. I thought that might have been the person who did Ghosty, but I am completely wrong. Proposal to improve the ergonomics and precision of type inference and generic functions. Sure, yeah, that sounds nice. Oh, no. I am already on board. Anytime I see any type, I want us to improve it. So generic functions, as currently supported in Zig, have the form of, yep, any type. And then you can see here's type of X. Okay, so this works well enough, but also has some general problems and limitations. Besides the controversial keyword, any type is a really inconsistent name. Okay. The type of pattern is a bit of a hack, even though everybody is used to it by now. I'm not used to it by now. It somewhat obscures the fact that equal takes two arguments of the same type. It also leads to unnecessary verbosity in some cases. The type of simple function like same is function I32 bool, But for the generic function equal, the intended type is to be something like function of type T, 2 parameters T, that return a Boolean. But the actual type inferred by the compiler seems to be function any type, any type, any type. In my limited testing, I found that the compiler essentially considers all generics and parametric functions to have the same type. Only the number of arguments is checked. Okay. Order dependence, proposed solution, change the function any type syntax to function infer T, which infers the type of X and binds it to T. This is maybe a little less exciting than I was thinking about, but using the infer keyword here is a little clearer than this arbitrary any type. This makes the intent much clearer in my opinion. You know, I'll agree with that. More importantly, the naming of the inferred types allows us to talk about the types and generic functions with much greater precision. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That is nice. I'm a fan of that. Similar proposals. This proposal improved, I hope, version that was suggested here. Towards the end of the comment, the following is proposed. Okay. This is a nice proposal. Yeah, I agree. Let's see if we can find where it was closed and maybe figure out why. Ghost closed this as not planned. What? You closing your own issues? How ugly would this be? Mlug reopened it. Matthew Lug. I don't like this. This is a capture group. I don't think it should be something else. It would be something like this would also be cool. Okay, a lot of speculation. Oh, just closed with no explanation. That's unfortunate. Well, that's an unfortunate way to end this one. Okay, so anyways, circling back, Zig is, I'm not sure if it would be considered a BDFL, a benevolent dictator for life type project. It's probably close to that, if not. But the point I'm getting at is that Andrew really sets a lot of the vision for Zig, and if it's not something that he ultimately has the final say. If you are going to rally a bunch of people behind an idea and get it in front of him, he seems like a very reasonable and understanding individual who would gladly listen to your proposal and decide if it fits in the language ethos. And if it does, it may be included at some point. But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, with Zig as a language, you are kind of getting what you get, and you have to take it and run with it. And that sounds bad, but what I've got so far from Zig has been really, really great. So every single thing that was mentioned here, outside of maybe this any type one that I would love to see get rid of, I don't feel like I need these things. Would this be nice? Yeah. Is it worth the complication that it will add to the language? Maybe. Make function definitions expression. This drastically changes the complexity of the language and the complexity of reading Zig code. Is that worth it? I don't know. I don't really think so. Comptime interfaces? Yeah, I don't know. That one's hard to complain about. And then the getting rid of the any type, also hard to complain about. But I guess what I'm getting at here is your issues may or may not be implemented. And that's not just a Zig thing. That's open source in general. So just something to be aware of. And then maybe a call to action for this video is, if you're on the Zig subreddit and you haven't been over to Zig it and you're going to be a nice, polite individual, maybe you should come hang out with us on Zig it, because the community over here is really, really fantastic. Thanks, and have a great day.